What up, Trinity Youth? It's your boy Rico coming in live for a virtual teaching. And I have a question for you, like always. When is the last time that you thought about what it's like to see, to hear, to smell, to taste, to speak? Can you remember even when you learned how to do these things? My guess is probably not. It's kind of a weird question. But actually, for me, I can remember. These glasses are new, prescription glasses, just got them. Kind of a big adjustment still. When I take them off, I still kind of feel my eyes adjusting. And so that's kind of an update for me. And then another update is I got hearing aids recently because of the masks that everyone wears for COVID. I realized how much I depended on reading people's lips to understand. And so because I couldn't that well, I realized I was missing a lot of the conversation and went to get my hearing checked. And, now I need hearing aids. So now I'm the proud owner of these sweet hearing aids that actually are like AirPods. They connect to my phone, Bluetooth. I can take calls on them. I can listen to podcasts and music. It's pretty awesome. I love podcasts. So it's really great. But I'm like learning how to hear everything. It sounds really loud. The kitchen's really tough to be in because of all the pots and pans and buttons and beeps, and it's just a little much. So I'm still getting used to it. But I've kind of had to relearn how to see and hear. It's an interesting experience. At 35, it's like you think I get it, I have it down. But it's been kind of interesting. And it got me thinking about how little or how easy it is to not think about the wonder of our senses, right? I mean, if we have all of our senses, not all of us do to the same extent, but even whatever senses we do have, it's so easy to kind of take those for granted. And it got me thinking about a little bit deeper. Sometimes it's really easy for us to do the same thing with this Jesus story, this Jesus thing, this Christian faith. It's so easy to kind of just go through it without even paying attention. And today I want to talk about paying attention. We are at the end of Mark. It's been a journey. We've looked through the Gospel of Mark, seen Jesus go through all sorts of encounters. And I hope that you were reminded of some things about Jesus. You learned some things about Jesus. And today we're going to kind of finish the series. And today I want to talk about paying attention. I want to talk about the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus. The thing that kind of makes up his life, right? The story of Jesus. I want to go back to those basics, because those, my friends, those basics, we never graduate from those. It's always the basics. The life, death, and resurrection of Jesus is everything. And so I want to take a look at a passage that kind of captures those three things. And then I want to offer a few thoughts. So I'm going to read from Mark 15, verse 33, and I'm going to end at 16, verse 8. All right, so I'll make a few stops along the way just to kind of point some things out. It's going to be a lot of reading, so bear with me. All right, here we go. He's on the cross. Jesus is on the cross at this point. And then it picks up at verse 33 from chapter 15. At noon, the day suddenly darkened for 3 hours across the entire land. Kind of interesting, right? Noonday, sun's the highest it is, the hottest it is, but the land darkens. And then sometime around 3 o'clock, so like 3 hours later, Jesus called out in a loud voice in his language, Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani. Pretty sure I mispronounced that. But this is what he was saying. He was speaking from the Psalms, the book of Psalms, Psalm 22. And this is what he was saying, my God, why have you turned your back on me? Some of those standing nearby misunderstood him. And they said, hey, he's calling for Elijah. One of them filled a sponge with wine that had turned to vinegar and lifted it to Jesus' lips on a stick so he could drink. And the bystanders again said, let's see if Elijah will come down to take him down. Will come to take him down off the cross. I want to pause real quick. There's a lot of details that we could focus on Elijah and the wine. And actually, I don't want to just kind of mention those. So I want to focus on one thing as opposed to try to cover all of those, because all of those are really kind of interesting things to think about. But I want to focus on Jesus's words. Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani, my God, why have you turned your back on me? He is praying from the cross, basically suffocating. I mean, this is it for him. He's done. And he's praying the Psalms. He's praying his ancient scriptures. Jesus lived a life devoted to God. I mean, he was steeped in the traditions of his people, of his faith community. And that devotion fueled his action, his teaching. I mean, we're still talking about Jesus 2,000 plus years later. And I just love that little tidbit that says so much about Jesus, about the life of devotion that he lived. And clearly his life was not boring. I mean, he traveled the world, so to speak. I mean, he traveled his country and he was known by so many people. And I just want to point that out, that Jesus lived a life, like he actually lived a life, a human life. And that is something that we cannot forget. And Jesus lived a life of prayer and devotion, and that prayer and devotion charged him to really lead a movement, to start a movement that, hey, you and I, if we follow Jesus, I mean, we're part of that movement 2,000 plus years later. I just can't. I mean, I could spend a lifetime. I think we can spend a lifetime just on that point alone. But let's not miss that. Jesus lived a life of the ages, a full, abundant life, which is the life that he came to give us. Okay, keep going. So he drank the wine, and then it says Jesus cried out with a loud voice, and he took his last breath. So he cries out again. He takes a last breath. And at that moment, the curtain in the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. Just a quick pause there. They had a big temple that was like the center of their religious life. And there was a big curtain, a big, thick curtain, many pounds. I mean, like thousands of pounds. There's a lot of evidence for like how big it was. I think we even, in different parts of the Old Testament, we even see kind of the measurements for this curtain. This curtain symbolized a division of space in the temple. So the temple was the center of their religious life. And then there's this curtain. Behind the curtain, only select people could go on select times of the year. Not just anybody can go past that curtain. In fact, only the priest can go past that curtain. And that was believed to be where the priest met with God to kind of advocate and kind of be a middleman between God and the people. The rest of us, like you and me, normal people, would only be allowed on the other side of the curtain. And so the symbolism of that curtain being torn from top to bottom was essentially the destruction of the division between God and people. That's huge. I mean, the way that Jesus talked about God, the way that Jesus talked about God as Father, the intimacy and kind of relationship that Jesus kind of had with God that other people just were kind of scratching their heads about, that's what Jesus was about. And so when he breathed his last breath and the curtain torn, it symbolizes the end of division between God and humanity. I love that. In other parts of scripture, it talks about the dividing wall of hostility, that there was this division between God and humans, that like no matter how kind of much relating was tried, that there was always going to be this gap. But Jesus came to bridge that gap. And so when he breathed his last and the curtain was torn, the dividing wall of hostility was destroyed, and now there's no wall, there's no curtain, there's no division between God and humanity. Amazing, right? We celebrate that. I mean, forgiveness, that salvation, that life. That's amazing. Good news, right? Here's a kicker. It also speaks to the dividing walls, not just between God and humans, but between humans and humans, the stuff that gets in the way of right relating. And so that curtain being torn is not only about, hey, now God and humans can be tight, but now humans can be tight with humans. That is another aspect of Jesus's life. His last breath was for the sake of humans relating to each other. And so what divisions, what walls of hostility are still up in your life, in my life, against other people, people that don't look like us, that don't think like us, that don't live like us? What divisions have we erected because, it's just a lot easier? It's like protective barriers, right? Jesus came to destroy those dividing walls so that we could be in real relationship with each other, all fueled by the relationship that we could have with God. Amazing. But the story keeps going. And so the Roman centurion, a soldier in charge of the executions, stood in front of Jesus, who he heard his words, and he saw the manner, the way that Jesus died. And this soldier said this: surely this man was the Son of God. Surely this man was the Son of God. Amazing. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to skip a little bit. I'm going to skip to the beginning of chapter 16. And so Jesus dies. He breathed his last. This soldier recognizes Jesus, says, surely this was the Son of God. Then they take him down because they realize Jesus had in fact died. They take him down and they begin the process of burying him. Some close friends and followers kind of do this. There's more to that part of the story, but I just, for the sake of our time, just want to continue. So we're left with the centurion realizing who Jesus is. Jesus is now off the cross. He's now in the grave. And then it's the next day. At the rising of the sun, after the Sabbath, on the first day of the week, very specific, the two Marys and Salome brought sweet-smelling spices they had purchased to the tomb to anoint the body of Jesus. It was part of a burial custom that all people that died kind of would get. That's how they honored their dead. They would get like anointed with all these spices. It was meant to preserve the body. It was meant to. It was all kind of a ritual. And so along the way, they wondered to themselves how they would roll the heavy stone away from the opening. They knew that the tomb would be covered by a stone, and they were saying, hey, look, we know we got to do this ritual, but like we don't really know how to get into the tomb. Have you ever done that? Like set off on to execute this plan, but kind of you kind of forgot the most important part of like how you're going to actually get in. Yeah, well, they're kind of wondering the same thing. How are we actually going to get in the tomb? So, I mean, they just kind of were desperate and going, and this is what their culture said to do, and so this is what they were going to do. They didn't know how they were going to do it, but they went to go do it. And so along the way, they're wondering to themselves how they would roll away the heavy stone. But when they arrived, the stone was already rolled away in spite of its weight and size. A big, huge stone somehow was rolled away. Stepping through the opening, which I don't know if I would have been brave enough in that moment to be like, I'm going to step into this open tomb now. No, I would have been like, something weird's going on. But they were brave and courageous. They stepped through the opening, and they were startled to see a young man in a white robe seated inside and to the right. And the man in white said, don't be afraid. You came seeking Jesus of Nazareth, the one who was crucified. He is gone. He has risen. See the place where his body laid, probably motioning like, hey, he was laying right here. See the place where his body laid. Go back and tell Peter and his disciples that he goes before you into Galilee, just as he said, and you will see him there when you arrive. So I want to pause real quick, and I want to just point out two things. Going back to the soldier, and then the women who just, stepped into the tomb and saw this guy in white, the fact that they are highlighted in this story is amazing to me. You have the soldier. He was in charge of the execution. I mean, if there was an enemy, he was it. He was the enemy. And he is highlighted in the story as one of the first, if not the first, to recognize Jesus as the Son of God. I mean, he was basically saying, oh my gosh, now I see. When he saw Jesus die the way he did, now I see that Jesus is the Son of God. And not only that, not only in kind of a religious way, he realized that, but he was actually making a big statement. He was actually saying, I see that Jesus is my true leader. I mean, he served the centurion, the soldier served a guy named Caesar, right? Caesar was this big, actually, he was referred to the son of God in their culture. So there's like a play on words there. But the point is that the soldier is realizing that Jesus is his true leader, meaning Caesar, the guy I've protected my whole life, actually, I'm I'm hood hopping. I'm changing sides. I'm changing teams because I see Jesus. Jesus is the Son of God. Jesus is the true leader. Jesus is my true president, right? I mean, that's the kind of language that he was using. Amazing, right? I mean, the enemy in the story gets kind of this amazing sort of role to play where he's the first one to realize the truth. And then it's the women who get to go and see Jesus. Well, they don't see Jesus yet, but they go to the tomb, right? And they're highlighted as the only ones who were brave enough to go and kind of give Jesus the burial that he deserved. What I didn't read is that the men, the disciples, they were too scared to go out because they thought, oh my gosh, if they kill Jesus, they're going to kill us. But the women said, you know what? We don't care. We're going to go give Jesus the burial he deserves. They were brave. And why I'm pointing this out is that the story highlights the enemy and women. In that culture, women were among the most marginalized, powerless people. And what I love about that is that this story is about giving true power, true life, true identity, true voice to those who don't have power, who don't have a voice, who don't have an identity, who are pressed outside, who are marginalized. This story is for them. That is what Mark is saying by highlighting the fact that the enemy, the soldier, and the women, the voiceless, were the ones to actually recognize Jesus and honor Jesus. And the people with authority, with power, with status, the men, man, they were hiding. They wouldn't dare step out. I love how this story of Jesus's life, death, and resurrection uh, gives the center spotlight, the stage to the people that you would never expect, right? I love that about Jesus. I love that, and I hope that speaks to you. Last verse. I know it's been a minute here. Last verse. The women went out quickly, and when they were outside the tomb, they ran away trembling and astonished. Along their way, they didn't stop to say anything to anyone because they were too afraid. I want to highlight that the women went out quickly, and when they were outside the tomb, meaning on their way back, they ran away trembling and astonished. I think that could be a vision for what it looks like to follow Jesus. Maybe it's different than what you've imagined. Maybe following Jesus for you means like praying a lot or reading a lot or being goody two shoes. But y'all, this passage paints a different picture. It paints a life of trembling and astonishment. That is to say, of constant adventure. Too big to kind of hold in. Something so big that it's like scary and awesome at the same time. Like a roller coaster ride, or like just like the thrill of a lifetime, right? It's like that was terrifying, but I want to do it again and again, right? That's the kind of life that following Jesus is meant to be. That's the vision for following Jesus that this story gives us. To be captivated by the story of the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus, to lose ourselves in that story, and then to find ourselves in that story, to learn to see ourselves and our world and those around us through that story, to learn how to walk again and to work and to see and to hear and to think and to speak and to do and feel through that story. Y'all, that is what the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus is about. And so here's my so what for tonight. The story of Jesus, the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus is meant to change everything. It's meant to change everything, not some things, not just one thing, not just the other thing, but everything. And here's the now what. Let's make time to let it change us. Let's make time to let the story change us. I'm not saying go and change yourself. I'm not saying go and try harder. I'm not saying help the woman cross the street. I'm not saying stop gossiping. I'm saying make time this week to sit, to walk, to run, to discuss. Do what you need to do to let the story change you bit by bit. That's the action step. Trinity Youth, the more that we together at huddles, at Summer Quest, in between, at church on Sundays, the more that we can let the story change us, the more that we will be changed and the more that we can change the world. Call me ideal, call me idealistic, but that's what I get from this story. Love you all. Peace.